Assalamualaikum and a very good day to everyone. Today I will present a research which entitled Development of Causal Loop Diagram based on his system dynamic approach in Malaysian glutinous rice. So these are the flow of my presentation. As an introduction, um, glutinous rice is a type of rice that mainly cultivated in Southeast Asia and East Asia. So it is a bit sticky when cooked and broadly consumed across Asia, including Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. So in Malaysia, as we know, glutinous rice is widely consumed with various fruits, coconut milk, and traditional foods during the Malay festive seasons and other occasions such as during Hari Raya. And the recent trend shows that the consumption of glutinous rice among Malaysian increased by 0.49% since 2010. In this regard, it shows that there is a change in the current dietary habits among Malaysian that consumes glutinous rice with the increment of population. So these are the issues in Malaysian glutinous rice. So um, the demand that I have mentioned just now is increasing by 0.49% every year. So this contribute to the shortage of glutinous rice, and the local production is unable to fulfill that requirement, even though for about 57,600 tons has been imported every year. So besides that, mm, a massive smuggled glutinous rice cases from the neighboring countries into Malaysia have been frequently seized by the authorized agencies, and it has reported that several cases of smuggling Thai glutinous rice worth um, almost 200,000 from a neighboring country by sea at Langkawi and near Bukit Kayu Hitam, Kedah, Malaysia. So almost 50,000 kilograms of smuggled Thai glutinous rice had been seized by the Malaysian Border Security Agency, or known as AXM, and Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency, or MMEA, that happened near Malaysian border. Okay, from that issues in Malaysian glutinous rice industry, I have come out with a problem statement. First one is mm, um, despite government intervention through subsidizing schemes and cultivation projects in Langkawi in 2022, that worth RM 30 million. There are major concern that this kind of a mega project have not contribute to the successfulness of the project itself, or in other words, the success rates are still unsatisfactory. Okay, and besides that, it is found that um, the Malaysian glutinous rice have been examined by several studies using various approaches such as polynomial approach, stochastic boundary analysis, and also data envelopment analysis, linear regression. And however, the relationship um, or the correlation among the related variables in holistic view remain unclear. So in this regard, a research effort to uh, to identify and correlate related variables in the glutinous rice industry is very crucial in order to understand the behavior of the system. And subsequently, the conceptualized model should be formulated to quantify how a variable affects another variable that systematically changes over time in the glutinous rice industry. Okay, this is the research methodology. So as you can see right now on the slide, um, we begin the research by articulating glutinous rice problem in Malaysia, and after that we identify cause and effect variables, and subsequently the cause and effect variables uh, uh, will be correlate to uh, uh, to know, to know the relationship between the cause and effect variables. And after that, uh, the correlation between the cause and effect variables uh, is determined whether it is positive or negative causal relationship. And based on the uh, positive or negative causal relationship, uh, the loop, the feedback loop is would be constructed and in order to determine whether it is reinforcing or a balancing loop. And finally, from the feedback loop, uh, we will determine um, the the impact of the feedback loop. Okay, in order to understand the development of the causal loop diagram, so there are two types of feedback loop. Feedback loop, uh, which is the first one is reinforcing loop. So reinforcing loop, how we determine the reinforcing loop by counting the numbers of negative polarities, whether it is 0 or even. Okay, so if the numbers of polarities 0 and even number, so we will indicates that loop as reinforcing loop. Okay, on the other hand, if we count the numbers of negative polarities uh, in odd numbers such as 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on. So that kind of feedback loop is considered as a balancing loop, and it is indicated by capital B. Okay. As a result, the cause and effects variables, correlation among the variables, causal relationships, and feedback loops are presented in the subsequent slide. So these are the causal loop diagram that considered several variables such as food security, rice production, income, available land, rice area, population, birth, death, subsidized training, R&D, land degradation, cropping intensity, and productivity. So by take a look on the causal loop diagram, it is found that um, the variables that affect the food security is rice production and also population. So these variables have a significant impact on the food security, uh, where if we take a look at the indication or the polarities that we put at between the relationship rice production and food security, it is a positive indicator. So it's mean that when the rice production increase, so it's mean that the food security is increased. On the other hand, if the population is, when we take a look the relationship between population and food security, this indicate by the negative sign. So it's mean that when the numbers of population increase, so the status of food security will decrease. So it is logic that because when there are lots of people in certain area, so the stock of the food will be reduced accordingly. Okay, move on to another variables such as rice production. So there are two variables that contribute to the status of rice production. The first one is rice area, and another one is productivity. So productivity have a positive relationship towards rice production, where when the productivity is increased, the rice production will increase as well. And the same thing goes to the rice area, where when the rice area is increased, and the rice production will ultimately increase as well. And for productivity, there are lots of variables that give the impact on its status. For example, for land degradation, it has positive relationship towards productivity. The same thing goes to R&D, training, and also subsidized. So if all these variables increase, the productivity level also will increase accordingly. Okay, and if we take a look more on this causal loop diagram, we will notice that there is several feedback loop which is indicated by capital R and capital B. So R mean reinforcing feedback loop, and B indicate balancing feedback loop. So as I mentioned just now, the way we determine whether it is reinforcing loop or balancing loop is by counting the numbers of negative sign or negative relationship. If the numbers of negative relationship 0 or even, it's mean that the loop is reinforcing. And if the numbers of negative relationship in odd numbers, so we indicate that loop as a balancing loop. So here we found that the relationship among variables such as cropping intensity, land degradation, production, uh, rice production, food security, and come back to cropping intensity and also land degradation. This kind of loop is a reinforcing loop. So another reinforcing loop is population and birth, and the rest is labeled as a balancing loop. So uh, what does mean what does mean by the reinforcing loop and balancing loop? So the definition is land degradation, cropping intensity, and birth rate, as well as population, tend to be the most influential variables towards the food security and also glutinous rice, since they are considered in the reinforcing loop or indicated by R. So the reinforcing loop normally uh, um, contribute to two types of extreme situation, whether it is will contribute the food security and the glutinous rise in an exponential growth or rapid decline. So because of this situation, the reinforcing loop must be carefully observed, since this situation will force the system towards these two extreme situations. In contrast, on the other hand, for the feedback loop that indicated by balancing loop, such as other loop, so it's mean that um, the feedback loop is 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 a normal loop, and it will uh, normalize um, normalize the reinforcing loop uh, from creating the very extreme situation. So it can be concluded that causal loop diagram, or CLD, prove its capability in identifying the causal relationship among the related variables in Malaysian glutinous rice. So from this relationship, we can understand the fundamental of the system, and we also can understand the conceptualize of that system in order to find the root cause of the problem and the effect of the problem, and we can pay more attention to the variables that considered under reinforcing loop. So that's all the presentation from me. Thank you very much.